This sent me into the deepest, darkest depression. I, I was in such shock, I could not even function. I ended up going to my mom's, and they had a guest bedroom, and I laid in that bed literally until the funeral. I went to her funeral. It was just the most heartbreaking thing that I'd ever had to deal with in my life. It was just so traumatic, um, for everyone. She was so full of life, and for it just to end that way, come to find out she was texting while she was driving, and that's, she veered off the shoulder a little bit, and that's what happened. Um, she thought she was invincible, and this sent me into the deepest, darkest depression. I'd had some more trouble with my ex-wife, and she got to the point where she was not letting me see the boys like she was supposed to. We were battling in court. So at this point, I wasn't getting to see my boys. I just lost her. I was staying with my mom and my stepdad, which was turned into a big problem just after about 2 weeks. I was beside myself and just couldn't even function. And the girl that was coming over with us and we were doing the Opanas with, she came and picked me up once or twice, and we went to another friend's house and we did Opanas. And then I told her that, look, this just isn't the life that I want. I can't go down this road, and I wish you all the best. Because I knew that going through this, how easy it was going to be for me to fall back into the addiction with the opiates. And I had to separate myself. I deleted her phone number out of my phone. Um, but over the next few weeks, things started getting just pretty bad there at my mom's between me and my stepdad. We were having some words and some issues. He's just always had a real problem with me. So they at that time, during all that, I gave up my rental house. I just didn't want to be alone. I was so beside myself I couldn't even function after losing her. Um, so I, let the rental house go and was living with my mom. Well, at this point, a few months later, this just wasn't going to work. And my cousin had an apartment in the city, and he had a friend that lived over in the apartment complex that was looking for a roommate. So I went over there with them and hung out a couple times for like a football game. And, I asked my cousin, I'm like, are you guys doing pills? What's going on? What's the story? He's like, nah, man, like we're all, we all work. We're all trying to do good. We're trying to, make something of ourselves. He was like, now I'm not going to lie. We do, maybe on the weekends or something, we do party a little bit. He's like, and every once in a while, like, yeah, somebody might take a few pain pills or something. But he was like, that's not the kind of life we're living. He was like, come over here, man. We'll help you get back on your feet. And it all sounded really good. And so I did that. And for a few months, it actually, was going that way. But come to find out, uh, my roommate had previously had a really bad opiate problem. And now, through someone at work, he started dabbling in with the Opanas and snorting them at work and stuff. And then that bled over into him doing them at home, and then he said something to me one day, and I did a little bit with him, and like, or we might have been partying or something on the weekend, and I did a little bit, and then before you know it, we are doing these Opanas like 3 times a week, which now it's turning into, a problem. And after a few months of this, like, we would do them for a while and then we'd stop. And then we'd do them for a little bit and then we'd stop. And it got to where my body was starting to get a little addicted to opiates again, because when we would stop, the only thing I could think about was wanting to do more. That was the only thing that was going to make me happy. So I realized I was getting addicted to opiates again. This progressively got worse, and my roommate ended up having, he got to where he was a functioning addict. He needed like the opiates to go to work. And it got to a point, these Opanas were costing like $60 for one pill. And it got to where one day, like, he couldn't find them for like several days. And he had someone come over, and I didn't know this at the time, but they ended up shooting up heroin. Um, and probably a week or two later, my roommate came out in the open, and he was like, man, you should try it. Like, it blows everything else out of the water. At least just try it just once, just so you can say you've experienced it. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard of, really, is, doing something like that. I can't even believe y'all can even find that stuff. And I actually left and went out with my sister out that weekend and ended up staying at her place. Back home, and probably that very next weekend they were doing it again. And some of my cousins were over there, and they all was doing it. And I was just like kind of watching them and observing them, and I was like, man, I can't see doing that, like putting a needle in my arm. At that point, I had, I realized that my body was trying to get addicted to the opiates again, and I was really trying hard to not do them. And I kept trying to leave like the apartment to go somewhere else and stay. Um, but probably another week went by, and I just seen that they were doing it and they seemed okay. Like, nobody was ODing. One weekend they were doing it, and they're like, come on, man. And I gave in to the peer pressure. I did it. And we partied that weekend. And it was like nothing I've ever experienced in my life. But it wasn't like a good experience for me. It seemed so dark. I just can't explain it. It was just like the darkest experience I've ever felt. It wasn't any kind of reality that I knew. It was almost like I was in another dimension. And I did do it one other time, probably a few days later. And it was the same experience. And I was like, I don't want nothing to do with this. And I ended up just locking myself in my bedroom in that apartment. And I literally just smoked cigarettes one after another. Um, I wasn't really doing anything else. Maybe smoking weed here and there, but it wasn't nothing every day. I just shut my room when I shut the door to my room when I was there, and I tried to leave that apartment every chance I could to get away from it. And a couple months before, my sister took me to a race of uh, a little track where they raced, like they did like figure eight races. I went to that race with her and met a young lady who was a mutual friend of one of our cousins, and she came up to me and started. She had heard about my girlfriend dying, and she told me she was sorry, and we talked for a little bit, and then nothing was ever, said or done since then. But we did become friends on Facebook, and I was following up on her page a little bit, but I was just in a really dark place and doing the things that I was involved in. I just lost my girlfriend. I was in such a dark place that uh, I'd really started to become suicidal. And I wasn't trying to get caught up in the whole heroin thing. Just something in me was like, you cannot go down this road. Sister ended up reaching out to me because her and her dad were looking for some pain pills and Opanas and Xanaxes and couldn't get any. And uh, they she really was hoping that I'd help her out. And I almost felt like obligated to help them because it's weird, but because she was in my car when that happened. And I felt obligated to help them. So I told her sister, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the pain doctor and see if I can't get a prescription. And I did. And she gave me 120 Lortabs and 90 Xanaxes. And I came back and called her and sold them a bunch of pain pills. And I really don't remember all the details, but I was very suicidal. I ended up taking a handful of Xanaxes. 2 days later, my roommate got an Opana and we snorted some Opana, and I took another handful of Xanaxes. And I don't remember any of it. I passed out in a ditch on the side of the apartments on the side of a very busy road. And they had to literally come down there and like pour water on me and smacking me, trying to get me to come to, trying to get me back to the apartment. Well, I did come to and I walked back to the apartment. They all stayed at my cousin's apartment and I walked back. They was like, man, go home. They was really upset with me. So I walked back to the apartment and I opened the sliding glass door. We lived down on the first floor. I opened our sliding glass door on the patio and just passed out right there with half of my body in the apartment and the other half outside on the patio. And it was like early January, so it was very cold. I'm not sure how long I laid there unconscious, but I ended up coming to about 3 days later when I actually had consciousness of knowing where I was. And I woke up to my cousin laying beside me with his hand on my chest. He was monitoring my breathing and my heart rate. I'm not sure how I made it through that, how I didn't die. Uh, my intention, I wanted to die. And I took those handful of pills and snorted that Opana, and for some reason I didn't die. And I think, well, I know that now one of the reasons that I didn't die is so that I could share this story to help other people. God wants me to help other people who are going through these type of addictions and challenges of trying to break through and come out of these dark places. Well, that really got my attention, and I locked myself in that bedroom again, and I just I really started praying to God. I'd gone to church and stuff when I was a kid by force, but all the things that I heard at church, like it all stuck in my head about turning your life over to the Lord and asking Jesus to come in your heart and save you. And at this point in my life, I was like, I have literally tried everything that there is in this life. I'd been addicted to drugs. I'd been addicted to sex. I'd been addicted to alcohol. And every one of them caused me heartache, caused me to hit rock bottom, caused me lots of problems. And I was like, you know what? Yes, Lord, I hear you talking to me. And I'm willing to give you a try, because all I do is screw everything up. I have ruined my life. I don't even want to live anymore. I had a little bitty TV, probably like a 9-inch TV, and I turned it on and was actually watching the 700 Club, and there was a story that came on, and it was about addiction, and I literally started bawling and just crying, sobbing uncontrollably. I fell on my face in that small little bedroom and just cried out to God, asking Him to please send someone to help me. Please open a door for me to get me away from here, that I don't want this life, that I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do. Please help me. And I continued to pray and just think over the next couple of days. And then someone messaged me on Facebook, and it was that girl that I'd met at that racetrack. And we just started talking. And after a couple of days, she was like, hey, you want to go get something to eat? She had no idea what kind of life I'd been living. If she did, she probably would have turned around and ran the other way. We went out to eat. She was so sweet, so pretty. We kept talking over the next few days and weeks, and started hanging out a little more. Then when she would go to work, like a couple times, I did end up doing like Opanas with my roommate, and I ended up coming clean with her about what was going on. And after probably like 6 weeks of us talking, my grandpa ended up passing away. I had a really hard time with that. This was on my dad's side, my biological father. And she was there for me. She was very adamant about helping me to get to start seeing my boys again. She was very adamant about me getting back on my feet and getting a job. And I was all for it. And I was, just confiding in her. And I took her in my roommate's room one day when he was gone, and I opened a drawer and showed her all of the spoons and syringes, and she was blown away. I said, I've got to get out of here. I've got to get out of here.